life. When I saw you at dinner in Skylark last summer, how little I dreamed that I should be closely related to you someday. I can't realize it at all, but I hope to know you better and be charmed as everyone seems to be. Richard thinks you are very remarkable, and I hope when you return to New York, I may really come to know you. I am sure you and Richard, having the same interests, will enjoy a very happy and worthwhile future. Yours, with my best love, Mary T. Aldrich. It isn't very warm, is it? Dear Miss Lawrence and the sister, welcome to mother. Because he's a New Englander, and she is nearly 80 years old. When she attended Lawrence Academy in Groton, letters were supposed to be formal, dignified. The people she knew in Boston and Concord didn't call each other darling and dearest. How they would have thought that's the height of bad taste. My father's letters to her were signed, Your loving husband, Edward Irving Aldrich. She would have been shocked by any other signature. Now, Lady Jane, she says, with my best love, and take it from me, when Mother wrote that, she meant it, up to the hilt. She isn't like the people we know who toss endearments around like confetti. And don't get the idea because New Englanders seem stiff and standoffish and reserved, we don't feel deeply and love deeply, too. An impish grin suddenly lighted my wife's features. Oh, like those old congregational deacons buried in Cape Cod cemeteries. Yeah, I floored one of them. Most of the old boys had 3 wives and at least 15 children. I should have warned you in the Florence. I'm surprised you married me. Up to this time, Gertrude had never met my son, Brick Jr., and who is now 11, and David, 9. At my request, they came to lunch with us at the apartment. The boys were quite different in appearance and temperament. David, still chubby and rosy, made friends easily. Gently encouraged by Gertrude, he was soon chatting easily about a new pet he had acquired. Dick remained miserably aloof. He was too tall, too thin, too grave, and too inexpressive. He was an embarrassing replica of myself at this age. His shyness, silence, and unhappy withdrawal from the luncheon conversation then irritated me unreasonably. I found myself booming at him as father used to boom at me when he felt I had failed to do him proud at those Sunday gatherings at Uncle Sam Aldrich's. And when Dick's shaking hand dribbled chocolate sauce onto the table and myself, my annoyance was loud and harsh. I felt Gertrude step not too lightly on my foot. A few minutes later, Gertrude reminded me pointedly that I had to read a certain play script in the office. I left her alone to make friends with the boys, while David occupied himself with a pile of illustrated magazines. Dick wandered into the library. He was standing by the desk, looking at a letter with foreign stamps, when Gertrude came in. Startled as if catching something wrong, he dropped the letter and hung his head. Do you like stamps, David? I can give you those and lots more. I get letters from all over the world. I'll save them and send them to you if you wish. He tried to thank her, but the words wouldn't come. In their place came tears. Suddenly he felt Gertrude's arms around him. She was holding him close. She was crying too. Presently she whisked him into the bathroom and washed his face and hers. In a few minutes he was telling her how much he hated loud noises and how deeply my shouting had upset him, making him only shyer and more awkward. Now, we won't tell Dad. It will be a secret just between you and me. When I returned 2 hours later, a furious game of casino was in progress. After the children went home, I asked Gertrude how they'd all got along. "Oh, famously. Your boys are darlings, Richard." And David has a twinkle in his eye that tells me that we're going to have fun together. But what about Dick? Could you break through his shyness at all? Dick and I are going to understand each other very well. Bless his little stout heart. And if you will only keep Edward Irving Aldrich out of the picture, everything will be all right. She said nothing more. And it wasn't until quite a while later that I discovered what had happened between Gertrude and Dick that afternoon. And then it was not from Gertrude that I learned it, but from grateful Dick himself. It was decided by Gertrude and Richard that Sundays were to be set apart for the family. When we first talked of renting the Long Island place, Gertrude had said, "We can have your boys with us. They'll adore it, and it will be good for them to be in the country." It's good for them to be in the country. By the terms of my divorce, I was allowed to see my children whenever I wished and have them with me 6 months of the year. As they were very young when their mother and I separated, it had seemed best for them to make their permanent home with her second husband, a well-traveled Englishman, Teddy Cabalis. He was the type of man I would wish my sons to be with when they could not be with me. Before I married Gertrude, I had been in the habit of dropping in at the Cabalises several times a week, late in the afternoon, to spend an hour with Dick and David before their early supper. On Sundays, I sometimes took them to the zoo or to the American Museum of Natural History. Helen and I were following the behavior pattern established by other divorced couples of our generation. We were inclined to pride ourselves on our courteous tolerance of each other once the marriage tie was dissolved. When we happened to meet on the street, we would walk a block or two together. It was an article of our code that the children should not suffer. When in that plan there was no intention of wooing the boys from their mother or from their stepfather, of whom they were extremely fond, as he was of them. In fact, Gertrude was always at particular pains not to compete with Helen for the boys' affection. She never presented herself to them in a maternal role, but as an understanding, amusing companion. I'm sure that no tribute in her entire career meant more to her than the love they gave her. Soon after we took the Long Island house, she suggested to me that we ask the boys to spend their Sundays with us. When I said I would like this, she proposed to meet Helen in town and talk it over with her. I don't want her to think that I'm trying to wean the children away from her. Punctilious about not interfering in Helen's plans for the boys with any schedule or discipline. And so it came about quite gradually and naturally that Helen and Gertrude should discuss amicably matters relating to my son's welfare and happiness, largely because of Gertrude's wholesome and realistic approach to the problems involved. I am sure neither she nor Helen was ever jealous of one another. Gertrude could not help anticipating Christmas and making the boys the center of her plans for the season. This immediately evoked the question, what about Helen and Teddy and their son, little Edward Caballos, whom the boys loved? All these were Dick and David's true family as much as Gertrude and I were. Gertrude and I, when she brought the problem to my attention, felt that one of the best things we could do for my sons was to give them experience and the memory of happy, harmonious family Christmases. There should be no struggling of one set of parents against the other, no invidious comparisons, no criticisms and resentments. So it came about at Gertrude's instigation, but wholeheartedly accepted and encouraged by Helen and her husband, that during Christmas 1941, the three Caballoses and Dick and David, whenever possible, share our Christmas Eve party and our Christmas tree. The festivities began Christmas Eve in our living room, which was dominated by the tree, on which Gertrude had hung a gift for everyone with a humorous rhyme, often written in her own hand. The next day we dined at the Caballoses. The tradition of Christmas as a time for family and close friends, for quiet singing of carols and intimate gatherings, was always deeply important to Gertrude. She enjoyed Christmas parties with the fresh enthusiasm of a child wherever they were held, at home, on tour. More than once I caught my sister looking at me quizzically, as if I enjoyed these stay-at-home Sundays, which were so different from the life I'd been living since coming to New York. Mrs. Aldrich had been invited to the summer home on Cape Cod with Gertrude and Richard. Now, everything in New England style, and Gertrude repeated a dozen times that week as she made ready for Mother's coming. She had not taken me into her confidence, and I was amazed on Sunday morning when Matthew brought in a platter of smoking hot fish balls and another of hot fried cranberry pies, two rich crusts holding the cranberries and sugar. If you have been out in a dory for 3 or 4 hours fishing, a plate of cranberry pies is a welcome adjunct to a cup of coffee. But on a warm Sunday morning, after a good night's sleep, and have already had fish balls, the addition of cranberry pies is definitely gilding the lily. Where'd you get this idea? I demanded of my wife. Gertrude smiled sweetly. Darling, you told me about them yourself. You said you used to love them when you were Dick's age, and your father always had them Sunday mornings. It was true that we occasionally had the pies, a special breakfast treat on Sundays or holidays. You don't have to eat them, Mother. Oh, I'd like one, and a fish ball, please. Aren't you afraid you have indigestion?
Young and Cernan abandoned their carefree attitude, perhaps because of awe at the approaching moon, perhaps because of the tension of one of the most critical points in their mission. Whatever the reason, Apollo 10 plunged around the edge of the moon. There was a final "see you on the other side" from Stafford, Godspeed from Mission Control, then only static. Everyone sat back to wait. Everyone, that is, but the astronauts. They pitched their spacecraft to the proper attitude and then ignited the engine, putting on the brakes, slowing them into lunar orbit. We were to wait 27 minutes to find out, but the burn was perfect. Stafford even had time for a quick study of the moon below and later was to report the first major scientific discovery of the flight. Old volcanoes. A couple of them, Stafford said, no doubt about it. Down below, we waited for Apollo 10 to reappear. Hello, Apollo 10, Houston, over. Roger, Houston, Apollo 10, you can tell the world that we have arrived. Roger, 10, it's good to have you. We'll believe this thing. The guidance was absolutely fantastic, and we'll give you the bones right now. This engine is just beautiful. Charlie, my hats off to the guys in the trench. I love them. Earlier today, just as Apollo 10 was slipping into the moon's shadow, there was another televised report from the astronauts. The topic was navigation and whether they were where they were supposed to be. Right there, there's old John, friendly face. John's pointing right now at the sextant and a telescope, which our navigation means to get home, and hopefully to do part of the rendezvous. Yeah, it's the best working part of the whole machine. It's really working beautiful now. Got a good operator. Yeah, you entering the lunar penumbra at this time. Do you notice the sun setting at all, over? I can't see the sun right now, Charlie. Roger, put us in the right attitude to see it. Okay, Charlie, it appears that the sun's reflection on Snoopy here is getting a little bit dimmer. So we very well could be where you say we are. I hope we are. Charlie, it's definitely getting a little darker outside. Roger, 10, that's good news, over. Across the point looks a little bit smaller than a tennis ball, as we're 310,000 miles from the Earth, and now less than 9,000 miles to go to the moon. This is Apollo 10 signing off. We'll see you later today.
When astronauts take pictures of the moon, of course, they have to use natural light, and the quality of their pictures depends on just how good that light is. Apollo 11 astronauts, Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin, who were to land on the moon in July, pointed this out when they had their pictures taken after their craft had been rolled out and set up on pad 39 at the Kennedy Space Center.
What do y'all think of this kind of sun angle to work with? That's just like the one we'll have on the moon. That's just the sun angle, real close to the sun angle we'll be working with. That away.
CBS News will provide extensive live color coverage of tomorrow's dramatic space event. This includes a special report at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time when the lunar module undocks, another at 4:30 p.m. EDT as the module approaches the moon's surface. Right from our newsroom in New York, in color, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Each of those placed strategically around the Earth.
We got him right away, sir. Hello, Snoop. How you doing?
Snoopy, of course, is the lunar module.
Hi, Snoop on Hydrant. How you reading us? Bye-bye. I'm in. Reading loud and clear. We're about 30 or 40 feet away from the station keeping for about 5-10 minutes here.
They separated.
Just give us Pooh and Beta. We got a load for you, and you're ready to copy some pads.
They have separated. You're hearing John Young from the command module. And we've got them 30 or 40 feet away from him. Just where they're supposed to be. Separation took place, just for some long minutes. Mission control.
And I'm ready to copy. Roger, you know, it's DOI, first pad, and we got 3 pads for you, starting with DOI. I'll read them all through all of them, and then you can read me back, okay? Okay, it's DOI, 0, 9, 0, 9, 4, 6, 0, 0.
These are the times for the next maneuvers. They're very nice clear the way before they go to this television. They're given the time for DOI. That's the descent orbiting station. And that time is 99 hours, 46 minutes, and 2 seconds, translates into 4:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. While they're going through these steps, CBS News color coverage of the flight of Apollo 10 will continue in a moment. And from Mission Control in Houston, they're reading up corrections on the timeline by a few seconds when they will go through the most important maneuvers of this whole flight. And here is a picture from the command module.
Copying this, he said he's got a picture of the limb if you want to look at it on TV. We have it, Gino. We're ready to continue with 981 if you're ready. I'm ready to copy. Go ahead. Plus 0.
Houston clearly wants to get these nuts and bolts of this flight out of the way before they look at pictures. As you can see there, he's obviously got the camera mounted in the window. As John Young goes ahead reading off, taking off these figures from the ground tracking stations as to the times of the maneuvers to come. Maybe Leo Krupp out in Downey can tell us what we're seeing through the window there at the moment.
0, 1, 6, 7, 5.
I believe John has that TV camera mounted in the right-hand rendezvous window, and what you're seeing is the lunar module flying in close proximity. I believe he's going to move out about 25 or 30 feet. And as soon as they get this CAD copies, they'll probably go into their inspection of the lunar module, and Tom Stafford will maneuver the lunar module around so we can look at all sides of it.
Got any idea what that is we're seeing right there, Leo?
No, I can't quite make it out on my monitor, Walter.
No, I can't either here. Some external part of the lunar module, quite obviously, but what it is, I can't make out either. They said they were about 35 or 40 feet away, which is where they're supposed to be. They're, of course, at this point, making 6,700 miles an hour around the moon and station keeping at that close distance. That's a rather exciting 2 hours and 15 minutes from the time they first discovered the pressurization problem, where the signal was reacquired coming around the moon this time, and it was confirmed that they were able to undock. And now for the big part of this program later this afternoon. Trying to talk to John Young.
Charlie Brown, Houston, over. This is Snoop. He's reading the loud and clear. Roger, he's copying the pads, and we're not reading him at all, Snoop. And I'm ready with a PDI pad if you're ready to copy, over.
For some reason or other, the ground, Mission Control in Houston, we as a television audience are not hearing Charlie Brown, the code name for the command module, and this John Young now is flying alone. It's companion to the Apollo 10. There in that lunar module, you see from the right-hand window of the command module, that's just called Snoopy. Characters out of Charles Chester's popular cartoon. You can see down the lower left-hand corner, there's 10 magic steps to the moon that will be descended on the next lunar module to fly around the moon, Apollo 11, by the Apollo 11 crew, and they land on the moon in July. If all continues to go well with this flight. In other words, the lunar module that we see there is canted over about 45 degrees, the top of it heading up to the upper right-hand corner of the screen, the lower part of it down to the lower left-hand side of your screen. We can make out much more of it here now, of course. You can see see the dividing point between the upper stage and the lower stage. The two astronauts are in the upper stage. The lower stage is not inhabitable. They remain in the upper stage, and in the lunar landing, that lower part stays on the moon's surface, and they blast off from it as a launch pad. They would do the same thing on this flight, but make that separation. At 11-mile altitude, they'll be on the second revolution of the moon and their second pass within the landing site. That time scheduled this afternoon for your benefits again is that after this television look at the lunar module, then they go back around the far side of the moon again, and the listening to mission control for a moment, but the lunar module fires their engines at 4:35 while they're in the far side of the moon. We will not have a signal when that happens. They descend then as they come around the moon on the near side again, down to that 10-mile altitude. They reach that point at 4:35, at 5:47, that is. 4:35, they fire the engines for the descent. They make that descent, the near point at 5:47. They fire the engines again at that point to go into a very high orbit out around the moon, puts them up 200 miles above the moon on the far side. Spinning around the next time, they come down within 11 miles of the lunar landing site 2. They have the Sea of Tranquility. And this time, when they fire to rejoin the command module and to rendezvous with it and to dock later tonight.
Touch all balls. Touch 00011. 00931. 02200.
Scott McLeod, out at Grumman, we've been listening to this read-up of these figures back and forth. We heard from Tom Stafford saying that John Young could hear him all right, but apparently John Young's transmission to us was lost for a while, to the ground, that is. What are they doing in the lunar module at this moment?
Well, at the present time, they're preparing to make their maneuvers, probably, around to show the command module all sides of the lunar module, a complete set. As you recall, they have already opened the landing gear. It has been deployed. You can, I think, on the monitor that I have here, see the forward gear, and I think you pointed out the ladder going down. These numbers that are being read to them are the numbers that they will enter in the computer and the numbers that they will be checking to make sure that they perform all of the burns correctly, that they're updating the software.
Scott, it's going to be the lunar module that does the turning around, a little silhouette there for Charlie Brown, dancing up in front of him. He's going to remain steady with the television camera, and it's the lunar module that's going to do the performance.
Yes, that's correct. Very similar to the way they did in Jim McDivitt's flight.
Right. Should be pointed out that the space people have grown exceedingly confident of their engineering skills. This is only the second flight in space of a lunar module. It's the first, of course, in the moon environment with its strange gravitational anomalies, in this deeper space in which the command module must re-rendezvous with the lunar module. These fellows have no way to come home. It's a critical flight in every sense of the word.
But we're not getting it here in the MCC.
Houston reporting these communication problems.
Hey, this time has got to be fixed in the next couple hours, guys, but tell them to get with it. Roger.
That was Tom Stafford, commander of this flight, showing a little annoyance. And everything's looking good there, but annoyed with this ground link communications problem. You just heard Mission Control say that Goldstone, which is a tracking station in California, is getting the downlink, that is the transmission from Charlie Brown, from John Young in the command ship, but they're not getting them in Houston. So it's obviously
is that 69.2 by 57.5 good? Stand by.
the problem is in some part of the ground link communication.
Snoop, Houston, we are with you on the 69.2. Say again. I'm reading Bay 82 out of the addition, 69.9 by 62.9 by 57.5. Stand by. We'll have it for you.
They're confirming their orbit remains the same after their separation maneuver.
Snoop, Houston, Fido's checking. Stand by.
They want to read up from the ground.
Houston, that's the go on the after the Okay.
Their apogee, Apolloon, the highest point over the moon, is a little bit higher than the circular roof they had expected. 7 minutes away from the separation burn. Their low point, their perigee, or now that we're around the moon, they refer to it as paraloon, is about right, but they're a little high on the far side of the moon. This does not affect the flight.
Steady out here on the station, keep it down, once we got squared away in our attitude. Okay. Snoop, Houston, we got a beautiful picture out there of the... Roger, I'll mark the 6 minutes. Charlie Brown, we finally got you, over. Oh, that was 6 minutes. Oh, was it, okay? Okay, I got 5 seconds for 6 minutes. Okay. Okay, 6 minutes to countdown for that. 6 minutes. Charlie Brown, Houston, we read you 5 by now, over. Roger, I got 5 minutes and 45 seconds to step. 44, 43, 42. We're right with you. Houston, this is Snoopy. With that drift you saw, how do you expect our platform to be? How close to good alignment? Gotcha. We expect very small torsion angles in all axes, over. That's good to hear. Thank you.
The platform alignment is
Just get back on the moon. That's what installation center just to touch that Charlie, but everything's looking good here.
that's tracking.
Roger, Tom. So just one question on the tracking light. Have you tried it? Stand by. John, here's the tracking light for you. Yeah, please turn it off. It works. Great, thank you. We saw it.
This is Air Force Major Charles Beach, who is the chopper communicator. Later class of astronauts.
You pass on your tracking light for a minute.
Stafford asking John Young to try his tracking lights. Tracking lights needed for the rendezvous, for the visual portions of the rendezvous. They are brought together
That's fine.
by radar.
Maybe underneath the vehicle. I don't think you can see it. Yeah, I saw one reflection there. We're okay.
The closing moments of the rendezvous. It's nice to have those lights on there. I heard, because of the communications problem from John Young, as to whether he expects to work with the camera a little more than this, or when, if there's some tuning up that could be done there. the moon. The module is below the lunar module at this point. Very shortly, in a couple of minutes from now, firing his engines to separate further from the lunar module. And there's a checkout procedure involved, of course, in getting ready for that.
Okay, John, looks like about 2:30 coming up the step, babe. Okay. Keep pass on to our support division. This half-glass stone box has failed about 3 or 4 times on us. Roger, sir. We copy. We're still getting some pictures, though.